I do not want to say that an artist is nothing without his materials, but he sure wouldn't get an awful lot done without. So today I would like to focus on some brushes that I find very useful. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Now it is true that what materials I use, especially what brushes I use, are questions that pop up quite a lot in the comment sections underneath my videos, so I just wanted to get it out of my system and make a dedicated video where I took you through the brushes that I find myself gravitating towards the most. In no way am I saying that these are the only brushes that you would need and these are the absolute best brushes ever. The whole list that I'm going to talk you through is based on, first of all, my personal needs as a landscape painter, but also my personal preferences with the techniques that I'm using. So it is possible that were you to try some of these would not meet your expectations or your needs as much. So this is really more me sharing how I work. So if you are in a similar niche or if you have a manner that is similar to mine, then I hope that you might find this video helpful. Now what I would suggest we do is I will talk you through different categories of brushes and we dive into maybe slight differences within those families of brushes, right? And I will also include some footage that I can find within my older videos and the precise sequence where the brush that I'm talking about is being used, so that I can illustrate my point and maybe the different uses that you can put those brushes to. So I will include the exact references for all the brushes that work out the best for me. In no shape or form am I saying that these are really the best quality brushes or something. These are brushes that for me have a good balance between their price point and their quality. All those that I'm going to mention in this video are holding up quite well, although I'm taking them through the paces very much. I'm not particularly precious with my tools. I know that there are definitely painters out there who take more care of them than I do. Just so you know that these are, I believe, at a good price point and at a good quality. Also, maybe another caveat, I paint mostly with synthetic bristles. This is the way that I prefer. I have maybe, well, really a couple of brushes only that are natural hair brushes, and I do dislike them. I do believe that it doesn't give me the brush stroke that I like. They do not hold up in time. They are a pain to clean. I do like to work quickly. I do like to not spend whole afternoons cleaning my brushes. I do like when everything is done quickly, and this is what synthetic bristle brushes give me the most, right? So all of these are synthetic fiber brushes. Now I have prepared a presentoir of sorts with the different brushes that I'm going to mention in this video, and I've tried to sort them into groups so that it will be easier to walk you through it. So first of all, those that I would want to focus on are the flat square brushes. So this is by no means a stunner. I believe that this is a big classic and I think a kit brush in a way that every painter, more or less regardless of what genre he's painting in, has in his collection. For me, this is really the workhorse of my repertoire in a way, and as you can see, I do have them in different sizes. If we start with the flat square or square flat ones, I myself love the whole Onyx line by Jackson's Art. They come in a couple of different sizes. Whenever I cannot read the inscription on the brush itself and I cannot think of the name, I will find them in my order history on the different art supply sites that I most order from, and I will leave a link to them in the description box in the order of appearance in the video. Those flat square brushes, why do I love them so much? It is because they can hold quite a lot of paint, and the advantage is if you need to start a painting, you need to cover quite a lot of the surface to establish, be it the underpainting or the initial values. So you need to lay down the colors quite quickly, even more so if you are painting on plein air, so from life, you really need to move quickly. And the flat square brushes are going to allow you to do that without going so much into details. So if you look at the brush strokes that I will try to include in the footage, you will see that of course they leave quite distinctive brush marks. So I personally like for the end result to be a lot smoother than that, of course. So I'm not going as much for those marks voluntarily. So I do need to use other brushes on top of them in order to smooth things over later in the process. But in the beginning, this is what allows you to get the job done very quickly. Of course, it doesn't mean that you absolutely cannot use them for the detail work. You can, especially this little number here is quite small and very flat and thin. So you can do a lot of details with this. Just, you know, not a very fine line. It is not suited for miniatures, of course, if you want to do the details with this. But I will include one sequence that I'm thinking about from a winter landscape in the Highlands, where I use this in order to shape out the mountains. So it is still a useful brush to get into the early stages of detail, if you will, to shape forms in this way. Of course, were you to go for the very textured look, this is exactly what a flat square brush will help you do. I have another example in mind that I will include here on screen. Is a portrait that I've done of the coronation scene of King Charles III, and I wanted to have the fur on his cape really give this impression of fur without going too much into detail. So I wanted the brush strokes to be quite textured, fur-like, of course. So this is what I've done with this square flat brush. Now, another advantage, of course, with this square flat brush is that you can lay the brush flat and have rectangular brush strokes, but you can also use the finer side of the brush in order to have some finer lines. This is great if you want to create a pattern that is really rectangular, of course. So these are really quite versatile brushes, I feel like. So this is why I wanted to start out with these. Next up, we have the Filbert brush. So for those of you who are not aware, a Filbert brush is a mix between a round brush and the square flat one. So it starts out like a flat square one, but its bottom bit is rounded. And this is really a very, very useful tool, I believe, especially in landscape painting, because they're extremely versatile. You can use them in order to make some brush marks that are leaf shaped, if you are painting trees, for instance, or like rounder forms, maybe some hills or something in the background without going into much detail. It is much easier to make out the form right away, to paint out with something that is quite rounded. But they have also the advantage of the square flat one in a way, because they have a side that is quite thin, so you can make some great detail work with it if you use it in a slanted way. For instance, this is also something that I used in the painting with the lady that has a tartan scarf wrapped around her, and I had to get the tartan details right. If you vary the way that you paint with the edge of this type of brush, it really works like a calligraphy brush or a calligraphy pen. So you can play with the thickness of the brush stroke that you're getting. So you can start out like a very thin line, then apply some more pressure, get something thicker really, and then drift away in a thinner way. So a very, very handy tool, this one. Now another classic, of course, are the small round brushes. I say small because this is mostly what I use them for. As you can see, the majority of this type of brushes that I have are really the small ones. Of course, this is what you use for detail work, be it in a landscape to paint out small branches or details in the leaves or details in the bark, or maybe singular grass blades or something. They are also incredibly useful if you are into portrait paintings, and this is what I would use to go into the details of the face, the different features, but also the fine lines or something in the face. Once again, I will include some footage from the portrait of King Charles III that I've done. Also, this is what I used in order to paint the jewels, so the crown and the orb and the scepter and the chain that he had. I have a couple that I do believe hold up a bit better in time, because these are the brushes that get damaged the quickest. Obviously, they are very fine, they have not a lot of bristles, and they are under the same amount of strain, obviously, as the other brushes, but they do not have as much bristles to hold up against it. So the ones that I will link below and that I will show you in the next sequence are the ones that I feel like are the best value on the market, especially the Raphael Sepia Deco brushes that I absolutely love. These are the ones that I always keep the longest before wearing them down. The other ones are Winsor & Newton ones. They're actually watercolor, but I honestly do not care. They did a good job for oil paintings, and I am not at all under the impression that they got damaged more quickly than the maybe natural bristle brushes that are fabricated especially for oil painting. So yeah, these are of course my personal opinions, right? So they are debatable. This is what I use for these types of detail work. Now this is where I believe we can dive into something that is a bit more exciting, and these are all the special effect brushes, or so they are called. As you might see already, they do have some very different forms, but for me they belong in the same category of special effect brushes because they are not universal brushes. They all have a certain purpose in the way that I work. What do we start with? Maybe the most obvious ones. These are called comb or rake brushes. And this is because they have a very distinct form. As you might see already, it is like a filibert, but a filibert that might have been modified a bit, as if bits were chopped off in order for it to make it comb or rake formed. So this is very useful in different types of situations, especially in the landscape painting. So you can use these, of course, in order to save some time when you are painting detailed grass, because it spares you the effort of putting in each grass individually. So you have 10 grass halms already on the tip of your brush, so that you can put some bits here and there and prepare a ground where you already have a bit of detail, and maybe then go in with a fine round brush in order to detail out the different singular grass halms that you want to really stand out. This is a great time saver in these types of situations. This is also great if you want to create a ripple effect on the water. It can also help whenever you need like some multiple line help, right? So it might be getting some detail in the hair done if you're into portrait paintings. It might be useful maybe if you are putting in multiple lines into the bark of trees. So basically, whenever you are in a situation where you do need to have multiple times the same brush stroke all over again without wanting to go through the trouble of making it manually each and every time. These types of brushes come in different sizes, of course, and sometimes also in different forms. So I have one that is distinctly more rounded. I have one that is, on the contrary, more triangular nearly. This is the largest one and the fluffiest also. So whenever I want to paint grass with this, I have to make sure that I'm not overcharging the brush with medium or dissolvent, but I nearly use it with paint only on my brush if I want to have some very distinct lines. Now the next form that I wanted to talk about is the doe foot. I have 3 different ones that are a doe foot form, or deer foot, I believe both exist and are the exact same thing basically. I have a large one which is another Pro Arti Masterstroke series, another that is much smaller, much softer, and a last one. Which one is it? It's a Raphael one, which is the smallest one, and it is really texture-wise something in between the first 2 ones. The Pro Arti, for instance, is very, very hard. It's not at all a fluffy brush. So the advantage of this is that if you pick up paint without, once again, overcharging it with dissolvent or medium, you will have some very distinct and very sharp small points actually that will appear on the canvas. You can see that there is a field behind Kilhuan Castle. It is autumn, right? So there aren't any grass harms left in that way. So the whole field is very textured, very dry. So it creates, when the light falls in a certain way, like a very rough landscape. And I wanted to, and I did not have the space on the very small format to put all those small points manually. So I just used this doe foot brush and created the texture much more easily in that way. The advantage of the Raphael brush is that it doesn't give texture as much through the bristles because it is a very soft brush, but it does give you a very distinct form for your brush stroke. It is really a very leafy like brush stroke. It's quite oval, so it is great for creating foliage. And then the last one, as I told you, as it is the smallest one and something of an in-between texture, it is more rough and small. It will give you a very distinct form, more maybe than the biggest one, but it will also give you a bit of texture as well. So you will have less smooth brush strokes than with the Mauritius one, but yeah, a nice amount of little points that are created if you are not overloading the brush. And then finally we have the last category of brushes, which for me are very similar, but they do have a different purpose each. So these 2 are called soft blender brushes. The first one is once again a Pro Arti Masterstroke series and is called Soft Blender, and the other one is a Da Vinci one and is called Dry Brush. They are similar whilst not having the exact same form. The Pro Arti is a bit more round shape, whereas the Da Vinci is really, it's less oval and a more dense brush. It is true that both of them serve the purpose of blending things out because they are both very fluffy brushes. So they leave a very soft brush stroke. At the same time, they do leave a very distinct mark in my mind. This is why I will include some footage, and I will show you that I personally use these two mostly for painting the sky, especially for painting clouds, and not in the final stages, but in the preparation stages in a way. And this is all because I do feel like they do leave a mark, a distinct stroke form which is rounded, and this is what I prefer to use for the clouds because they are fluffy, right? So if you want to create a bit of texture in the clouds, all the while painting in a very soft manner without very apparent harsh brush strokes, these are your best friends. If you want to have a transition that is incredibly smooth, where you would have difficulties making out where one color ends and the other one begins, then I would say these are your best friends. They also are designed to help you blend the color. This is a lunar mop, which I have in different sizes as well. Once again, it is a Pro Arty Master Stroke one. And this is another Raphael, which is called a Cavern Plus. But they do have the same function more or less. The Raphael is maybe a bit flatter, whereas the lunar mop really is a very round and bushy brush. Very, very fluffy, very loose bristles. So if you go over something that you've created with maybe first of all these, so imagine you are creating the skyline and you are painting in some clouds first with these, then you smooth over with one of those in order to blend them in nicely, either the clouds between one another or the clouds into the rest of the sky, and then you can go back into using one of those in order to recreate some detail in some of the clouds that are really standing out, for instance, that are particularly fluffy, that are particularly visible to the eye and distinctive. So this is the way that I'm using those for. So you may see why they do fall in the same category while still having really different types of purposes. What I love about these ones, so the lunar mop and the Cavern one, is also that you can use them in order to buff out the background. So whenever you want to recreate this very photorealistic effect where you have a difference of focal point, so everything that is in the foreground is really extremely in focus and everything in the background is really blurred, these ones are the ones to go for. I feel like you can really smudge out everything in a very harmonious, very smooth way. They are great for doing that. And also, this is the brush that I used in order to paint a rainbow. I will leave another example here. So in my last painting with Kilhorn Castle, I started out with a small flat square brush in order to get those lines done in the different colors of the rainbow, right? To have something that is quite bright. And then in order to blur things, because a rainbow is obviously a optical effect, a light effect, so it's not solid, it's not hard, and you do not wish for hard lines. I used just this brush without anything on it. I dragged it across the rainbow. That's it. That did it. I'm really pleased with the effect that it gave me. This is how I would also proceed in future if I were to repaint another rainbow in another painting. So yeah, this is what I would recommend you guys opt for. And this is it for today, guys. I hope you liked diving into my tools and seeing how I create the different effects that you might have already appreciated in my previous videos. If you were curious of how I achieve all of these effects, this is the tools that I'm using the most. I hope you could find something in there for you as well, and I hope you could discover maybe some forms or types or brands of brushes that could be useful to you. As always, thank you so much for having joined me for this little session, and I hope to see you very soon in my next video. Until then, have a lovely morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. Cheers guys, have a good one.